What got you to a place where you chose to wrote this book, the family board meeting, and then the iterations of it going forward?
Yeah, back in 2011, there was a pretty significant time in my life. And I was sent an article by a family member about Walter Isaacson, the famous biographer, doing his last interviews with Steve Jobs. And Steve Jobs was quoted as saying in this article right after he passed away that Steve Jobs spent his final days surrounded by close family, and he used the opportunities for final interviews with his biographer to explain to his wife and children why he wasn't there for them. And Jobs was quoted as saying, "I want my family to know who I was. I wasn't always there for them, and I want to explain why and for them to understand." And Walter Isaacson, I don't know him personally, but an incredible writer, supposedly asked Steve right there on the spot, "Are you glad you had a family? Are you glad you had children?" And Steve Jobs in this final state didn't hesitate, and he just fired back and said, "Yeah, it's 10,000 times better than anything I've ever done." And that really hit me because, he had just passed away, Steve Jobs, and you saw the murals and all the crazy stories in the news and candlelight vigils. But no one was really talking about that. And it had a big awakening on me, Lee. And this was a time in my life I was bringing back 2 real estate investment companies from near extinction from the '08 meltdown. I had just been going through the process with my wife of adopting my 2 oldest sons, and we were having miscarriages. And I was recently, a few days earlier, approved to donate a kidney to my father. And I went through a point of critical that just made me look at family life completely differently. And a lot of it had to do with my 2 oldest sons, adopting them at the age of 7 and 5, going on to have 3 more kids. But that is where it came from, where I didn't want to be successful in business and a failure at home. And so I tried to start looking for ways that wouldn't happen. And we came up with some principles and simple rhythms that I just started to share at mastermind groups, like how we met, and they took. And they were very uncomfortable to talk about. Some were very emotional. But here we are in the 3rd edition to the book because they kept asking, could you add this? Could you reiterate more on this subject? And it's really become, probably an estimate about 300,000 families using it worldwide, which is very humbling, but also very inspiring for my wife and I.
Yeah. It's pretty powerful saying you have 18 summers to get, what do you say, around 80% of the quality time with your kids. That's not very many summers.
No, it goes, and
I mean, he left in my life.
Yeah, right. Well, and so with adopting my 2 oldest at 7 and 5, my mentor taught me that, I did that math equation, Lee, and it was a positive push to say, make the most of this time. You're already behind on the time you're given. And I think it gave me a positive push. Those boys are now 20 and 22, and we have a phenomenal relationship. And I have so few regrets about prioritizing quality time with them while still working within my businesses. But I was able to give a priority to it that has fostered an incredible relationship and a lot of great memories.
Yeah. And you talk about it in the book, and I think it's also powerful. Spending time with kids, just being around them is not quality time. It has to be super intentional. So yeah, if you could kind of go through that, how do you set up these board meetings and how do you recommend doing it? And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very simple process. I just started to spend these quote unquote board meetings, these private days with each of my children every quarter, every 90 days. Every 90 days we would have this one-on-one time to reunite and look forward to the next 90 days, connect. And really, there's only 3 principles to them. The first thing, besides scheduling it, which is probably the thing that makes so many entrepreneur parents fail, they don't schedule it like they do their most important appointments. I schedule it with my children. And then I've got 3 guiding principles. The first one is one-on-one. When I'm with one of our children on one of these special days, their best friend's not invited, their siblings not invited, my wife's not invited. It's just us, one-on-one. And that one-to-one principle, Lee, gets so overlooked. I can't even begin to tell you how big of I don't like the word hack, but what an incredible principle that is overlooked for achieving a great relationship with your kids. And that's the first one.
Okay. And I'm assuming there's a giant difference in that individual relationship, as opposed to just, hey, we're all together as a family. That's not the same thing as the one-on-one. Like, what have you noticed is the difference? And once you started doing it, how long did it take to start to really see the change? Was it a month?
Right away. That's the thing where so many people will report back to us and go, it was almost like slowing down time. We're so busy with so many things around us, other people around us. Like, I came from a big Irish family. We could have, I got like 40 cousins on my mom's side. So you have these big family gatherings, and that's great. But the real intimate opening up, it comes on one-on-one time. What 13-year-old wants to talk about puberty in front of their little brother and sister? No thanks, right? or other deeper things. And so I think it happens right away. There's this noticing of this deeper connection because it doesn't happen that often. We don't realize how little it happens until we start to schedule it. And there's the other thing that really couples with the success of this, Lee, is the second principle, which is intermittent tech fasting. I set at least a 4-hour limit, minimum. I mean, with these days that I plan with my kids, they plan it. I go all in. We've done anything all over the board of things for that day. But the biggest thing that I learned years and years ago is I would turn my phone off. This might be on a Wednesday morning where I've planned 4 hours with my son or daughter, and people go, "Oh, how do you do that with your businesses?" Well, if the world blows up in 4 hours, or my business does, I haven't done a very good job running my business. And when you turn off your phone, again, it puts the magnifying glass on the relationship in the moment in a very positive way that we don't realize we've lost. We don't realize how much we pick up the phone or we get interrupted by a text or a Facebook thread or such. So planning one-on-one time and turning your phone off, whether it's your phone or your teen's phone, both, no electronics are invited on one of our, Father Days, board meeting, whatever you want to call it. And that has also been a game changer, because when you stop the interruptions, it gives people the comfort and the relaxation to actually open up and really enjoy themselves or talk about tough things they need to talk about.
Yeah. Why do you think they're so resistant to turn off the electronics? I get the kids, they want to stay connected. It can be kind of addictive, but for parents and business owners, I have to, for large chunks of every day, turn mine on complete do not disturb, or I can't get anything done. It's crazy. There could be multiple texts coming in literally every minute. And I feel like I'm on this rapid response desk, to respond to everybody. But
Yeah.
why do you think that is? Why do you think it's so difficult?
There was a huge badge of honor in lots of businesses where an entrepreneur, or professional could say, "Oh, I'm available 24/7. Reach me anytime." It's almost like a badge of honor. And so it's kind of distorted why at least a lot of entrepreneurs who go into their own business that went into it in the first place. I'm going to create my own schedule. I'm going to create freedom to be there. And then all of a sudden they buy into this. No, I need to be available 24/7. And what we've tried to reverse from working with thousands of families now and having some very clear results, you have to have times of complete and total unavailability to connect with your deepest relationships. And as you just mentioned, Lee, to get some of your deepest work done. And so, the unavailability, turning off your phone, your laptop, your email notifications for a period of time like this, 4 hours with your child, is irreplaceable. And if you allowed interruptions each time through that, it it will not have it the potency it could otherwise.
Yeah. And this, I want to get to the third principle, but this notion of entrepreneurs saying, I'm doing it for the family, often ends up being the exact opposite. They're driving the family away. So talk about that. That was super powerful also.
Yeah, the claim of I'm doing it for the family has some truth to it, but then it has some misconception to it too, because what happens is, first of all, I've seen it personally in my own life years ago and with others I've worked with and coached with. It's easier to be a good business person than it is to be a good mother or father, I think. And so we say we're doing it for our family, but we also feel like maybe we're gonna, and this could be a subconscious thing, but it happens. Maybe I'm not, the best thing I can do is just be at work. and we don't give ourselves credit of the importance of us, our personal relationship. And so we almost hide at work. Also, because sometimes there's not a lot of glory in certain parenting. Those late night moments we have, or things of toddler meltdowns, teen grumpiness, there's not a lot of thumbs ups coming to you at that, or accolades or awards coming in your industry. So we say we're doing it for the family, but we avoid some of the nitty gritty, the real work, and that's not a good thing. And I think that we have to remember too. There is a great business concept called delegation. Oh man,
How do
thank
you
you.
spell that? How do you spell that? Should I write that down?
Dele- yeah, I mean, we got to delegate. I mean, you and I probably, if we're from our talk before, if you and I were actually managing our podcast schedule and that, I mean, I had to have mine taken away from me, Lee, because I'd schedule 3 podcasts in the same hour. And so, you delegate certain things to make a better result. However, the art of delegation has been abused by a lot of successful people in their home life. What they've done is they've used the art of delegation to delegate themselves completely out of family life to a spouse, to a grandparent, to an older sibling, to a nanny. And then they can't explain. I've seen this so many times, I can't even tell you that they feel like this disconnection at home. And they're almost feeling guilty, depressed, and even bitter. And they don't realize they've delegated themselves out of the relational part of family that you never really should have or never really wanted to. And so the intention was good, but it's really an abuse of the principle of delegation, and it's something you want to reverse gears on if you've done that. You want involvement with your family life. You don't want them to leave at that 18th summer and you're a stranger, where you've just been almost like just a disciplinarian or a ATM machine. That's a terrible feeling that I've seen a lot of people go through. And the good news is there's ways to avoid that.
Yeah. Yeah. The simple hack that I like to use is when we have a business, I've started 8 from scratch, we create value and we want to grow that over time, grow it responsibly.
Yep.
Families can intentionally create value too. And
Exactly.
and you have to be just as intentional about that. And those connections are really important in making it happen. So 100% agree. And then go through the third principle, the child-led activities.
Yeah, the third principle. So just to review, we slate at least 4 hours. We're one-on-one without electronics, what we practice called intermittent tech fasting. If you've ever heard of intermittent fasting, you're not giving up eating. You're just giving up eating between certain times. And that's what we do with our tech and our family. And we save that third thing, where the third principle is about letting them plan the day. You go all in and what they want to do. And there's a chance almost every time for some deeper communication. And what I've found is, doing something fun of their choice, going all in without the distraction, one-on-one, it tees you up, Lee, for 2 very important things. And that is for the opportunity to give your son or daughter a genuine compliment or a sincere apology. And these are working again with several families. These are 2 things that can be lacking. There's very sad moments where we think we've paid a really clear compliment to our children, something for them to appreciate and to want to live up to more, or, recognizing their talents or gifts, and we've never given it, or we thought we've given it. And this is a clear, very, very, uninterrupted environment where you can give that. They'll hear it, they'll receive it, and it can open up incredible conversation. The other thing, which is, I think, even a deeper fundamental value to instill in your family life, is that apology, that sincere apology. There's something that I saw happen, especially during COVID, Lee, which is called entrepreneurial immunity or business immunity. We're short, we don't keep promises, we're irritable, and we give ourselves immunity. We might roll over our children in a promise, or we set a bad example of impatience or curtness, and we say, well, I'm running 2 businesses, or I'm doing this, and we give ourselves immunity instead of apologizing. And let me tell you, that works in the short term. But once a 5-year-old becomes a 17-year-old, that is either consciously or unconsciously remembered, and it doesn't fare well. And so when we take the time, some of the best bonding moments, and some of them been the deepest and some of them been the funniest that I talk about in some of my talks, is when I stop to give a sincere apology to one of my sons or one of my daughters. And it's something that is not always easy for highly successful, highly driven people. But man, what a connection point when you'll actually offer sincere apology on something that might have happened that day or a week ago or a month ago. And you take the time to give a sincere apology, not a backhanded one, but a very sincere one. It really does open up some big doors.
So there's this probably a sense of I should be allowed to do it because I'm super busy. I'm providing for the family. I'm doing it for the family. Why don't you understand?
Yep.
That's not building the connection.
Exactly. And if there's something I've learned, this one thing, if people hear nothing else, think of all the times where you probably should have apologized and you gave yourself immunity. And we've all done it. We've all done it. So I'm not beating anyone up again. I'd be the first one to raise my hand. But what I can tell you is when I've reversed the gears, when I've swallowed my silly pride and I've said to one of my sons, you know what? I was just short and really impatient with you, or I've been kind of unavailable even when I'm here the last 2 weeks because I've been caught up in a work thing. And that's not fair to you. You've asked me questions and I've given, very nonsensible responses. And that's putting you on a pay no mind list. And I'm really sorry. That doesn't feel good and you deserve better. I'm sorry. I'm telling you, Lee, it creates the defense systems go down and the level of trust goes up.
Yeah. Inside organizations, when people don't do things they agreed to do, even little things, consistently enough, they lose trust completely.
Yep.
Like if I need to get something done, I have to worry about it, so I won't go there. So it's the same thing within the family. It feels to me like culturally in the United States, and it's like this in other parts of the world as well. One of my companies, we did business in 60 different countries. I went to a lot of those as we were building it. But it seems like the measure is money. Like that's the important thing. And I've really transformed over the last couple of decades to how we feel going through life is really what matters. And the connections, which I call the spiritual value creation bucket, family, community, whatever's important to each person, getting them all in balance is what really matters. And that shift moved me to relationships are all that matter, and family, even my sister's grandkids. I'm taking them up to Yellowstone here in a couple of weeks for 4 or 5 days just to hang out with them. And I'm gonna intentionally, after reading your book, make time to spend 4 hours individually with each of them, all 4 of them. So thank you for that. But this, what's your advice for kind of breaking out of money's the main measure, even though in this day and age, so many people virtue signal and say, oh, it's not about the money, it's about all these other things. But you look at their actions, and my gosh, it's 95% about the money. What's your advice to getting them moving in this direction? This is part of your work, really.
Yeah. And it's a big question because look, providing for your family is a very noble, very necessary a job or duty, I think, for me, the working entrepreneur, and my wife as well, but more so, I believe, me. So I understand there is an honor, there is a duty, there is a, that focus to provide, but it can, again, just like the art of delegation, become skewed. And that's where we have to be careful, where we start to all of a sudden get out of our own skis or outrun everyone around us. And at that point, it doesn't even make sense. I mean, I can't tell you how many people like a Steve Jobs that I've worked with that have done just that. They've sprinted past everyone and they've left everyone behind for this one quest that they would trade back. I mean, Steve Jobs lying on that bed right there. Do you think he would have traded back 95% of his fortune to redo another 5 years? Oh my gosh. There's zero doubt in my mind from what I read. And one of the things that's really helped me, Lee, that's come into more focus, because as an entrepreneur, I've had ups, downs, incredible wealth, near bankruptcies. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur for 26 years. Is in recent times, I've had the opportunity that, to be clear, I was too wimpy to take. And my wife actually said, nope, we're going to do this. So my 2 oldest boys, who are a big part of my life, I said, what? She said, I was doing a project with another entrepreneur group I worked with, and they asked me to do a whole thing on legacy, not just the financial of here's what's going to happen if I pass away and the assets and this and that. And that was part of it, but it was more of an overall holistic or relational. And it was very interesting. I've shared the text threads with some people where my two oldest sons, they'll still give the short K or TTYL, talk to you later on a text, yes, no. My wife sent a text saying, this is what dad has to do. It's a project. And if something happened to him, we're not saying it will, what would his legacy be? And they wrote these long texts and nothing had anything to do with the real estate properties that I've done or they might be left or that. It really took me back, Lee, on what was important and why I was important. And it actually gave me a comfort, if that makes any sense, that there was still a part of me putting on the money. I watched my parents go broke in fifth grade. My grandfather, one died wealthy, one died young on his way up the ladder, and it left his family destitute. So I've had a lot of that struggle in my life of financials, and but it gave me a reassurance that that wasn't the most important thing. And anything in my own head, that little man on the shoulder telling me it was lying, because my sons just put something in writing saying it wasn't. And they were able to document things that were not monetary. In fact, there were things that I did sacrificing certain monetary focus time to be with them. And so it gave me a grounding. So I think one of the ways to ask, again, it takes courage. And I'm going to be clear on that. I didn't have the courage to ask my sons. My wife had to ask. Is to ask, if something happened to me, what would my legacy be? And it's a pretty powerful question. You might not be happy with what your kids say back, but guess what? You have time to course correct them. No stronger course correct, but then you might be like, wow, okay, I'm going to go deeper into that. And this is what matters. And these other pressures I've been putting on myself of this larger trust fund or this or that, they might fall by the wayside a little bit.
Yeah. I always think of inheritance, which is the family planning to go to the next generation for most families, as divide and hope for the best. That's
really
how
is.
That's how I think about it. And legacy is growing value in all three buckets, holistically, generationally. And so how do we set the next generation up that way? I also think, though, I don't know your complete business history, but I think about the dozens and dozens of folks, leaders that I got to develop over the years of my different businesses that are off running some companies bigger than something I sold for 9 figures, leadership positions everywhere, what it's done for their families. There's a lot of legacy work here too on the business side. I'm not sure how you think about that. I like all of it. That's how I think about it. Family, I think about business. It's about legacy in all directions. How do you think about that?
Well, I think legacy on the business side, one of the most important things you can do, and I don't know where you stand on this, Lee, is convince your children or try to convince your children not to go into your business. Because I've seen too many people and families I've worked with try to force their children into the business. And I have a saying that I've learned: if you choose your child's path, be prepared to carry it. When you predetermine for a 14-year-old boy, this is the family business, this is what you'll go into, whether you're interested or not, you take away creativity, you take away inspiration, you take away drive, and that can be very dangerous. And so I believe a good business that can be passed generational, they want to step in. They're almost given the choice. You don't need to come into this. Look at something else. I always encourage my boys, don't go into real estate investing the way that I have. It was really a grind, and we're in a different situation. Grandma and grandpa had no money. One of my goals in my early 20s was to retire my parents that didn't have money. You don't have that. And so I've always tried to convince them not, and sure enough, now they're both investing in real estate as more of a side thing, but to their real initiatives. So I think for the business side, again, having them involved in the business and accounting meetings from a young age and stuff is something that we did, I think is helpful, that have given them a worldliness and real in the trenches. But for business, I just believe there is a real danger to predetermining your child's destiny in a family business. So maybe try to convince them not to go in, and curiosity might, like kill the cat on a few people wanting to, but I don't know if that kind of answered your question. That's just kind of my take on
No, it did. It did, and and part of it philosophically to kind of answer your question up front. Um, don't do it. Most of the time, it doesn't work, and even when it does work, bringing kids into the family business, others don't see them the same way. Do they see that they really earned it? It limits other leadership coming in. The vast majority of the time, sometimes it works, but it's rare. And I've always had the position, if any family member, and I've got sort of lots of informally adopted kids over the years. If they want to start a business, I'll give them a stake. If they want to come in, no, you can't come in a business, but tell me what you want to do, and I'll expose you to everything you need to make it happen. And I think it strengthens the family. It's there's a lot of risks with the whole family relying on one income source.
I agree. I agree. And it doesn't get, if you're teaching the core principles that I think we try to teach, Lee, then and they're able to use their own creativity, their own preferences, where they want to be, then that's what helps keep you always hear the first generation makes it, the second generation loses it, the third cleans up the pieces. Well, if you're giving them the principles and the space to go off on their own and use some of the same core values, like I'm a real estate investor. My son, who owns real estate now at 22, his main business, he's a charter fisherman. He has a charter fishing business that does really well and it's expanding. And I could have never picked that for him. But if I had forced him into my thing, he would go nuts sitting in an office like I have. He's an outdoorsman, but he's doing extremely well. So I have every feeling like family fortune will continue on with letting him go his own path with some overlap that I was able to teach him in business and marketing and building JVs and such like that. But if I had tried to say, well, fishing, that's silly. Don't do that. And that's what we tend to do.
Wasn't fishing one of his requested board meeting?
Isn't that funny, Lee? All the time. So I say that now. You want to talk about those days having a result. He would pick fishing. And, if I like fishing, Lee, but if I could go surfing or go fishing, I will pick surfing 10 out of 10 times. I love the ocean. I love surfing. He'll surf with me half of the time, but then he loves fishing even more. But I would always let him choose. We'd do it. At 18, he had already been mentoring with good friends of ours in the Florida Keys. He said, I want to get my captain's license, which is pretty rigorous for an 18-year-old. He got it at 18 and then started his own business. And he is absolutely the old, what do you enjoy? What are you good at? And what does the world need? I mean, here where we are, he's filling a need. And then now he's started his own fishing kids camps that are sold out through this summer. Where his boats are filled with kids wanting to learn to fish. His little 10-year-old sister is his assistant. Like, it's just so cool. Imagine if I had said, no, you guys got to do this type of real estate. I would have missed all of this magic and the money they're making, which is great. But they have a joy that a lot of second generation wealth loses because they're forced to do something that they necessarily don't want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many obvious, but apparently not that obvious reasons for what you said earlier. Earn it, enjoy it, destroy it. It seems to always happen in that order generationally. I'm kind of curious. I mean, I still want to get to the other half of my question from before, but I'm kind of curious. And there probably isn't enough time here, but what would the data say when more entrepreneurs do this board meeting time with individually their kids? And we'll get into date night with a question mark. Do they become more successful entrepreneurs outside the family business? My guess is maybe.
And I actually haven't done that data, Lee, but I've watched some incredible stories come back to me. And what's pretty cool is there have been some pretty influential people that have got a hold of our book, and it shocks me to think that person is using our simple little strategies. And what they've said is just comments of, and I don't know if this would be data to that, of, I cannot believe the conversation that I struck up with my 14-year-old that I didn't ever think they'd open up with me. I thought they would, unfortunately be going to their friends or the internet for that, but they talked to me. I can't believe that they were going through this and they felt comfortable to bring this to me. We were on a board meeting and I didn't realize I had never talked to them about this. And they were thinking that I was wanting them to take this hard path that I didn't even know I was trying to force them down. And I was able to conversate and no, that's not what I want. There's so many examples like that, Lee, which are just, touching. And I've saw it in my own experience. It's amazing when we facilitate quality time with such clear parameters. So it'd be tough to tell, but I definitely have a few stories in mind that it no doubt had a large impact. And, we never know those points of destiny. I do believe with my own sons and others I've talked about, these days were course corrections of destiny for both how I showed up for a father and how they had, the clarity of how they wanted to show up in their own life.
Yeah. And I'm sure this isn't just for entrepreneurial parents. I can imagine so many parents, super busy jobs, and come home with the same justifications for moving away from the family unintentionally.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Lean, when you said, wow, 3 editions. Well, there were things added. And one of the things was the first one was because I was an entrepreneur. So I was an entrepreneurial circle. So I wrote it for entrepreneurs. But in the 3rd edition, which was the first one we really worked with a publisher on, it went #1 on Wall Street Journal, which is something we were very shocked about, to be honest with you, because I still joke, we're not that great of writers. It's just that great of a subject, I guess. But we changed that and said, at first we made this book for entrepreneurs, but we found everyone's really looking for a deeper connection with their family. I don't care if they're what their line of work is, entrepreneur, professional, military, pro athletes, service work. It doesn't matter. Everyone wants a deeper connection with the people they really want that the most with. And this book just has such a simple framework. It can be followed by anyone.
Yeah. I think a lot of the experts out there, at least from my view, seem to be approaching it where more is better. And I think in your case, just do this simple thing to cause connection, and less is significantly better than here's the, 83 points to establishing connection with your kids, across the board. I think that's why it's being received so darn well out there.
I think you're right. And I want to give a disclaimer. This simple system of every 90 days, I have a half day with each of my kids, one-on-one, tech fasting, doing something of their fun to open up for some communication, possibly a genuine compliment, a sincere apology, deeper conversation. Sometimes the conversation will only be 5 minutes. Sometimes it could be, well over an hour. You don't know. But what I want to really warn people of here, Lee, is don't kill the trust you've just started to build. This is not the time to say, yep, we've done this. Now I can go into my 50-point lecture of all the things you need to improve in your life. I mean, it will kill the potency and the results like that, and they won't want to go anymore. This is not a time to be doing extra discipline, to be saying you need to show up in this way in your life better. You lose the magic, you lose the connection, you lose the effectiveness, you lose the potency. Just don't make it about that. Save your next 50 lectures for some other time or never have them. Probably better, but definitely not on this special time.
Yeah, kids don't like being talked at or down to. Adults don't like that either. None of us do. So it's amazing that that's the adopted style. And when I go I've worked with just thousands of high school kids on the virtues of entrepreneurship, and I'm right there with them. Like, what would you do? Where would you go? Like having this connected conversation. So different than when I watch the teachers and the parents that are volunteering, and the kids just sit back, kind of rolling their eyes. They don't respond well to it at all. I like this notion of every kid has a value creation superpower. How do you discover it? We're on this journey together. How would you like to create value in the world? And where would you like to start to kind of discover that? But we have to start. We actually have to start and be the best at a thing that you can be, that you took on, and that'll expose you to the next step. But it's their journey. I'm not building a little statue of me, going forward. Is that in alignment with what you're thinking?
100%. And if you try to build a little statue of you, you take away all the things you can't see, Lee, all the great surprises of gifts and talents that if you try to, force some sort of cookie cutter down on them and create that little statue, you, you lose all that. My older sons used to come to me and say, well, do you think I should do this? Or do you think I should do that? Would you want me to do this? And I said, don't put that on me. I said, don't worry about what I want. Don't worry about what mom wants. What do you want? What drives you? I can't see all things. There are gifts and talents within you that you have intuitions on, and I want you to have the courage and curiosity to go for those. I can't see them. If I try to force something down on top of you, that all gets smothered. I don't want to do that. So don't worry about what I want. What do you enjoy? What does the world need? What are you good at? And those things open up, some incredible starting points, like you just said. And it is kind of like the old, we could drive all the way from Florida to California. We can't see the whole way, but the lights at night give us just enough lights to get to the next part, and then to get to the next part. And that's what I encourage my kids to do. And a lot of other kids we've worked with in our retreats, and it seems to have resonated and also gotten good results.
Yeah, I love that. As you were talking earlier, I was thinking about, and there's so many examples, but one of my grand nephews, a couple of years ago, 8 at the time, his grandmother, my sister, said, hey, he really wants to have you assemble some Legos with him. So I went and got a bunch of different types of Legos, and we sat there literally for 4 hours putting together this Lego. I don't forget how many hundreds of pieces were in it. And he talked about it, according to my sister, for the next month. Like, it was
doesn't doubt.
Amazing experience doing that. I actually had fun too, because I like building stuff and doing all that. But it's making your point, and I can go back to other examples where we just created a deeper connection that way.
Yeah, it's so fun, and I have no doubt of that, Lee, because I've heard that so many times. There's a great cartoon that I've seen recently, and it's a middle-aged guy and a young boy sitting on a bench together. So it's either a father, uncle, young hip grandfather, great uncle, whatever it is. And the adult, he has the little thought bubble going up, and he's picturing a big house, an airplane, sports car, and the little kid sitting next to him with this big smile. And one of them, he's just picturing him and this adult just doing Legos together. Another one, they're just at a little fishing hole. Another one, they're just sitting on the bench together. And so it's like, and right there, it showed, okay, there is a huge lesson and a huge, guidepost that needs to take heed on this.
Yeah. So incredible. Yeah. I see the power of this. Why did you land on the family board meeting?
We called it the family board meeting because I started to call these board meetings because, I was a surfer, and the joke was, oh, I'm going to a board meeting. You go surfing with your friends or surfing with your family. So the word board meeting was, as an entrepreneur, well, every quarter, if you had a board meeting with your team, why would you do it? It'd be to reflect on the last 90 days, reunite, and look ahead to the next 90 days. And I said, well, I can do those with my kids, kind of the surfing analogy, the use of them for business effectiveness. So I kind of like to play on words. And then actually the famous author, Ryan Holiday, he approached me. He had seen me do a talk, and I was just, I had done talks on it, but not written the book. And he said, hey, I like what you're doing. I think you should name it the family board meeting, because this is about family. So it was actually Ryan Holiday, to his credit, that gave me the idea of naming it the family board meeting, because it was just a simple play on words. And I call it the most important meeting of your life. And so that's kind of the organic way that it came about.
Yeah, I love it. And no issues with non-entrepreneurial families adopting that language?
Zero. Because what I always say, and if you've seen me on different interviews or that, the first few years, Lee, people would almost come up to me with a guilt, like, hey, we don't call them board meetings. We call them daddy-daughter dates and father-son dates. And I'm like, awesome. I don't care what you call it, as long as you use the principles, put it on the calendar, and you do it. So it's there's no adoption thing because, as you'll see, the main principles I just discussed: one-on-one time, intermittent tech fasting, say the unspoken, let them plan the day. There's not much heavy business, lingo to that. It's more just overlapping principles in all sorts of lifestyles.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not super structured. Let it happen. Let it run out. So
Yeah. You try to overstructure 4 hours with a 7-year-old, you kill the magic. You let them plan it. And that's one of the funnest things where parents say to me, um, or even a lot of grandparents now, well, we want to understand their gifts and talents. I said, you want to understand their gifts and talents? Let them plan the day. See what they start to gravitate to. They're building Legos. They might really have this just mechanical inclination that they just love this. My son, well, gosh, he's picking fishing, 2 out of 4 board meetings a year. I got to watch this. It's the gifts and talents, Lee, start to uncover themselves when you let them plan the day and go all in. And it's pretty cool to let that unfold.
yeah. Yeah, I love that. I get to work with the communities of families in person. I've got 2 that I run here in Phoenix, and they're mostly lower income communities. But when the kids are in the room with the parents, and we're just talking about different things like traits they want to have when they become an adult, and capabilities, finding their value creation superpowers, et cetera. But when the kids start talking, one last weekend said, "Well, I really like solving problems," and so we're just talking about, like, well, how can we leverage
That's awesome.
these things? What are they? That's great. What kind of problems do you like to solve? And he always comes in. I've seen him twice now, always both times with 2 different really complicated next level Rubik's cubes. Like, that's so cool. And then we started a conversation around, well, do you think that's valuable for businesses or organizations to have people that can really solve problems? And I just love starting those conversations, but they get to say it. So I guess I'm just affirming what you're saying. This is what I find. We're on this journey with them. They're amazing people,
Yep.
and it's so fun to watch.
Yeah. I love my wife has helped start and run a few different Montessori and Waldorf schools. And the philosophy of that, which I always like, I mean, I was the ADD kid, Lee, who just got in trouble at school. School was not good to me. And it was kind of like, sit down and follow these directions. Right. And I wasn't very good at that. And the Montessori and Waldorf approach that we've seen, it's not that sit down and follow me, this teacher authoritarian in the front. It was, okay, follow the child. And I love that difference of follow the child, let them. And I've seen the results from our kids, I think, going from a different philosophy than I did, not beating up, just traditional education was not for me. But we can take that in at home instead of saying, all right, be quiet. This is what we're going to do. Follow the child. Let them go into the things like you did with your grandnephew with the Legos. It seems small or even trivial, but it's not. It's actually a huge, huge building block for them figuring out who they are, what they're good at, and where can they move within one specialized skill. That's what I think one of the things that we've had a lot of success with, where kids get overwhelmed. What do I need to learn? What do I have to learn? And say, well, what are you interested in? And then just remember, you really only have to bring to the world one specialized skill at a time to really be successful, and so, and that can change. But for me, going into real estate years ago, I figured out how to find an old house, fix it up, rent it or sell it. And that took me from near poverty to abundance. That one sentence, I said, guys, this one sentence, how to find a house, how to fix it up, and I could rent it or sell it. That's it. That was my whole thing for many a years. Still, now I build houses and either rent them or sell them. But it really hasn't changed. And it's like that one sentence, all of a sudden, yeah, it had other skills underneath it, like problem solving and sales and communication. But it's that one skill. And that branched me into be able to write family books and do family retreats and that. But I only had to develop one specialized skill to take root and then grow off of that. And it sounds like you did the same thing in a lot of your businesses.
Yeah. Well, you have to start with something. And, I don't count it as one of my 8 businesses, but in the first half of the 80s, I'm probably quite a bit older than you, but I spent, some of those years, 300 nights playing concerts and clubs and all that, in my rock band.
Wow.
And then during the day, to make a little bit of extra money, I took a job as an electroplating operator. And then I quickly became, after a couple of years, the the foreman. I had 25 people on the floor. We're just doing this specialized kind of brush plating, as electroplating by hand. And so here's that one thing. And then I had an opportunity to buy the company for, just by assuming it's debt, no cash, uh,
Wow.
600 grand in 93. Uh, Crazy, right? And then turn that into, hey, let's get a machine, and then let's get this and let's get that. So moved 9 times for growth, ended up in over 300,000 square feet when I sold it in 2016, 500 employees. And it was just starting with one thing and just keep adding to it. And that's something I really impress on with the kids. It's like you have to start,
Yes.
and then you can leverage it for the next step. And there's going to be some struggle to get that capability. It will build self-esteem. Don't stop. Use it to create value. But then you can accrete things onto it. You can add to it that can. Like when I was playing in a rock band in the early 80s, I graduated high school in 1980. Um, no way could I have seen having this $100 million aerospace business, traveling to 30 plus countries doing business.
Yep.
No way. But you have to start. And a lot of kids today, I'm curious what you're seeing. It's almost like they don't want to earn it. They just want to be that thing, or they're nervous to get started. And I always say, the better thing to say is probably, don't you want to earn that and have fun on the journey to get there? What are your thoughts
Oh,
around?
100%. And so I've always said, that which we obtain too easily, we never really appreciate. So it's actually a gift. And I know that some children, like my oldest son, has said, you made us earn certain things, and we kind of want them handed to us, and we're so glad now you didn't do that. Now that's coming from a 20 and 22-year-old. 15-year-old might say something different, but it really is a gift to be able to prove yourself to yourself that you can problem solve, that you can go deep and become a slow learning expert in one area like you did. You were sounding like a proficient and good musician, but electrical wasn't necessarily your thing. But you just continued to say, how could I solve more problems? I remember I saw an Elon Musk interview where he said, how do you decide what to invest in or who to hire as key people? He says, when they can really dissect a problem, and really it's not just, okay, name a problem that you had to solve, and they go into it. They can go into the intricacies and just the little pieces and all the things, and you can tell they just really got into it. It reminds me of that book, if you ever read it, The Surrender Experiment. Sounds like that's what you did. You surrendered and said, I'm going to be really into this. And then all of a sudden, these things started to blossom around you. And so for kids, I say, give yourself the same chance to go really deep into one area and keep just going deeper into that thing. Deepen or widen, always deepen. And that's my problem with school. You don't have to know everything. You need to know one thing really well. Generalize or specialize. And I think if you were starting, correct me if I'm wrong, Lee, if you were starting 7 other businesses right then with your electrical business at that time, that electrical business would have failed. But you were so committed to saying, how do I solve the problems? How do I learn this? And people go, well, Lee wasn't passionate about electronics. Probably not, but you were passionate about figuring out problems and the people that you worked with, and still being able to do your music and being able to produce something that actually made a difference. And I think that's where kids get confused. Well, I have to be completely passionate about it. No, you can be passionate about the things around it or within it. And you can't even see that until you really start to dig into it. Did that make any sense, or did that?
100%. And, for me, there's so much passion in, for me, leadership is creating value with and through others. So there's so much passion in that. So any business that's creating value, I'm passionate about that process. It's so cool. And I've been able to work with so many different, companies around it. But let's even back up. I had actually kind of a toxic and dangerous home environment. I was kicked out of the house at the beginning of my senior year in high school. And so and I started my value creation journey with the outside world, outside family, at 6 years old, pulling weeds, for 25 cents an hour. But my job as a cook at a Coco's restaurant, my goal was to be the best they ever had. And I started there before as a dishwasher, then a busboy. And my mindset was, I'm going to be the best they ever had. And it just kept exposing me to more opportunities. But if I went in there embarrassed about the job that I have, that's not going to expose you to anything. I just love that. So was I passionate about the restaurant business? No, but I love the people and seeing everything work and how it goes together.
Yeah. And
So that,
that's,
yeah.
that's the key thing. I think when you, I think a mentor of mine who unfortunately just passed last year, he said, how you do the famous saying, how you do anything is how you do everything. And you start to develop these bad habits. Oh, well, Coco's restaurant, this is it. So you're kind of just half, out of it, lackadaisical, whatever. Well, you would have brought that probably into your next endeavors or trying to raise capital without even realizing that, because these things start to ingrain subconsciously. But when you bring that now, you bring a different excitement, a different, wanting to do the best. And it comes across, I think, whether you're attracting people onto your team, or you're attracting capital. And everyone says, I'm sure you've had this, Lee. How do I raise $1 million? I said, you know how you raise $1 million? Borrow $50,000 and treat it like like $1 million, and treat it so royally and pay it back with enthusiasm to the person. That's how you start to raise $1 million. And maybe it's borrow $500 and pay it back with enthusiasm and respect and follow up. And anyway, I don't know if that makes sense, but
Well, the other thing about that passion is so many people wanted to help me. I had companies saying, hey, we'll give you all the chemistry you need. You don't have to pay us for a year. If you need longer, that's fine. We'll give you equipment. We'll do whatever. Because I was so passionate about making this thing work that I took over. It lost all of its business overnight, went down to 3 of us. And as a result of all of that, I never had to raise $1 of outside capital
yeah,
and build something that was quite large, that was very capital intensive, going through. So I think that's a really big point for kids. Be the best at everything you do, and that passion, it's infectious. Others will accrete around you and really want to help you. That's what I've been observing.
I agree. And that's incredible. You did it without any outside capital. Good on you.
Yeah, for sure. When did you and Jamie start the 18 Summers podcast?
We started that during the pandemic. So 5 years ago, we were home. A lot of people were reaching out. I mean, it was a crazy time. You remember, we're all stuck at home. Electronics, which is something that we appreciate, but also try to put in to boundaries, was overrunning families. And we said, I think it's time to start a podcast. So it's been 5 years running now.
Yeah, love that. Is there a story you can share? It's just sort of a inspirational moment or big takeaway from doing the podcast, having guests on?
Whew. So one of the most powerful ones was one of the only books, Lee, that I read 4 times. It was called Left to Tell. I don't know if you ever read it. It's a Hay House bestseller by a lady by the name of Immaculée. She survived the Rwandan genocide in Somalia. I'm sorry, not in Rwanda. And she was in a bathroom for 91 days with 6 other women. It's an incredible story. Her whole family was slaughtered. And she is such an example of overcoming, like probably the clearest I've ever seen since Man's Search for Meaning, if you've ever read that book. And
At
so
least 20 times.
Yeah, so that's one that I've read over 4 times along with this one. And on the podcast, she was talking about forgiveness. And, you read in my book, the family story and what my wife went through in her first marriage. And I had a lot of anger. I mean, really deep-seated protective anger. And similar to you, things that I faced maybe as a kid as well. And Immaculée forgave the people that killed her family. And she says, why would you give them that much power in your life? Anyone that's hurt you or people you love, why would you give them the power to end up focusing on them more than you focus on your loved ones themselves? And, we're dissecting this on the podcast, and it just kind of rips you open and go, wow, do I give more focus and attention to the people that I want to take vengeance on than I do the people I love? Even if it's, but I do it because they hurt them. She just had this calm understanding. She said, I could not give them that much power in my life more than the people that I love themselves. And that was just one really powerful moment that I can remember. And there's definitely a few others, but that was definitely a powerful one.
I've listened to a few of the podcasts. I'm going to go look for that one. So
Yeah. Yeah. Listen to that one. And her story is unbelievable.
Yeah. Incredible. Thank you. Super powerful. Also, donating your kidney to your father. I don't have a lot of time to go into that, but what was that like for you to go through that? I mean, that's a pretty traumatic experience for your body.
It was definitely one of the most profound spiritual things I've ever gone through. And, wherever your spiritual faith lies, I think that was a challenge set in front of me, and how I responded would dictate, as we talked about before, destiny points in my life. And when that opportunity came up, there was zero hesitation, and I couldn't call it courage or fear in saying, nope, that's going to be me. I think there was just some deep values that were able to be brought out of me right there, and that I didn't give myself credit for, if that makes sense. So, and for me and my dad, and I talk about this in the book, I really, we talk about that sincere compliment, Lee. My dad's father died Irish immigrant at the age of 6 when my father was 6 years old. So he left my dad's family, his older brother, sister, my grandmother, destitute. He was gassed in World War I, not a drinker or anything like that. He was gassed and died years later from the complications. And I had never told my father that I had so much respect for him growing up without a dad. And when I finally told him this, we were on I guess a board meeting on the beach alone, because at this point, Lee, which some people know, some don't, my dad was rejecting the kidney. He was like, no, I'm not taking a kidney from you. Absolutely not. You have a family. I'm not doing it. And I was able to tell him that day, hey, I've never told you this. And what did I say after that? I said, I've never told you this, but you grew up without a dad. You never took that trump card. What do you expect? I didn't grow up without a father ever. In all the hard times, I never heard you do that once. I said, so you set an incredible example. And just know that if you don't let me donate this kidney to you, you're not letting me be the man you've wanted me to be. And, within 2 days, he agreed. So.
Wow. Super powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I got an extra decade with him. He passed away towards the end of the pandemic. I think we would have gotten longer with him had he not slowed down his exercise and all that, like so many. But people say, would you do it again? I'm like, would I give up an organ, which I've now replaced with a bigger kidney and is functioning as 2 kidneys, to have an extra decade with my dad? Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. I think most would probably do the same if given the opportunity for family.
Yeah, so it was an incredible thing, and I think too, I know with my wife too, for our marriage, which she said afterwards, way afterwards, Lee, was she said, if you hadn't stepped up to do this, I hate to tell you, but I think I would have lost some respect. I wouldn't have thought you were the man who I thought you were. And so that was pretty powerful. Now I had already made the decision, all that, when she finally admitted. She said, I just have to be honest. She's just like, that was so clearly you. And I think if you hadn't, I would have thought, wow, this is not the guy that I thought he was. And so it was a proving ground that I wasn't even trying to do for my wife. And I think it definitely solidified just her respect for me. Not that I needed it, but again, that was one of the biggest compliments I've ever gotten.
Wow. My biggest takeaway from our discussion is that you really live what you're teaching others. And that's probably why it's so darn effective for everyone, because it's real world. It's what's going on. Any final thoughts or big takeaways for you in our discussion here today?
It's a great chat. Thank you. I think the only thing I would say is I really tried to live those things, but I've given up on perfection a long time ago. And people say, what's one advice to really help strengthen our family life? I said, get rid of that silly saying, the perfect family. I don't know what that looks like, Lee. I couldn't explain it. And when you put that pressure of being the perfect father, the perfect mother, the perfect marriage, the perfect family, it's just not realistic. And what I've learned is, family life is not about perfection. It's about bridging imperfections and simply making the most of the time we have together. And when you start to look at it maybe through that lens instead of the perfect family, I think it helps you decompress and relax a little and show up better for everybody. And so that would be kind of my parting words is don't worry about creating the perfect family. I haven't met one yet. It's not about perfection. It's about bridging imperfections.
Yeah, I think some degree of dysfunction is pretty normal for families. And
Yeah,
you can tell, though, you can feel it when connections are growing. And I think that's
absolutely.
really the goal here. And it's just a journey. But yeah, I don't know one perfect person walking the planet today either. So
No.
100%. If our listeners want to learn more about your work or connect with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, you can get the family board meeting anywhere, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles. But if you really want to just learn about the family mission and other things, go to 18summers.com.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for being on the show. I really enjoyed this discussion.
Me too. Thanks, Lee.
You got it. And this has been the Show Your Value podcast. If you got some value out of today's episode, I certainly did. Please like, leave a review, and subscribe. And until next time, show your value to the world. Thank you.